Impulse spending, hard. Keeping on top of payments, hard. Debt, staying out of debt, hard, at least for a lot of us with ADHD. And I have a background in something finance related, so that I there's a shaming, be able to do this. And so you might be in the same boat. So I just really want to normalize this. And what is really important to recognize is that our brains are wired differently. And we know that. And so that means we need different things to help us with our money. That's why the traditional ways of doing things don't work, because our brains are wired differently. Hi, I'm Jen Barnes, and you're about to experience how to ditch the old ways of doing things, embrace your neurodivergence, learn tips and tricks to function optimally, and love yourself, neurodivergence and all. Welcome to the Self-Loved Woman podcast. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Today, I want to talk about a topic that people don't like to talk about, but that I've been seeing come up a lot with clients lately, and even in my launch, things I was hearing people say, and certainly something that, as a woman with ADHD, I work with a lot. I work with myself a lot on figuring this out. And so that topic is money. If you're squirming in your seat, don't worry. I'm not going to tell you how to budget. Although you never know, maybe that's supposed to happen. But I do want to share some data, and I want to share some observations I have. And then I want to link us back into an episode I did with Money Expert for helping people with their money, not a financial person. If you ever struggle with money and you have ADHD, this episode is for you. First of all, I just want to name that the traditional ways of handling money, budgeting, all that kind of stuff tend to not work for ADHD. And I need to name that because a lot of us carry shame, or at least get mad at ourselves frequently for not being able to do it, right? And so I want to share some data to normalize some of our struggles as women with ADHD and what our relationship with money might look like. So it turns out that the three most common problems, by the way, that people with ADHD talk about are struggles with spending, especially spending impulsively, struggles with budgeting. I don't even budget. Not even when I was an actuary, I just couldn't get myself to do it. And then struggling to save. And so if you're like me, you might have retirement savings because that comes right out of your check, but you may not have other savings, or you might have some and then you blow through it. It's hard to say. Some of us are able to save, especially if we have a partner who's savvy that way, but for some of us, it can be really hard. So I want to talk about the data behind this. So it turns out that people with ADHD are 3 times more likely to struggle with debt, and they are 3 times more likely to miss payments. And I was like, I have automated payments, except that every year that yard waste bill, I, for some reason, miss it because I have the rest of my waste management taken directly out of my bank. And whenever I see that bill, it doesn't hit my radar. That's paid separately. So I'm like, oh, that I do that occasionally. And then you have the ADHD tax because you get charged a late fee. So you might know what I'm talking about. The other statistic I found incredibly interesting is that we are 4 times more likely to spend impulsively. Eesh. This all comes from a July 2022 report that was in The Guardian and a study that was done by YouGov. And I don't know, that resonates, right? Yeah, impulse spending, hard. Keeping on top of payments, hard. Debt, staying out of debt, hard, at least for a lot of us with ADHD. And I have a background in something finance related, so that I there's a shaming, be able to do this. And so you might be in the same boat. So I just really want to normalize this. And what is really important to recognize is that our brains are wired differently. And we know that. And so that means we need different things to help us with our money. That's why the traditional ways of doing things don't work, because our brains are wired differently. First of all, we are wired for interest and novelty. So there's that. We talk about impulse spending. It's, oh goodness. And so how often do you buy something because you're bored? Or you get a thrill out of buying something. Mine is books. I get a thrill out of buying a new book. I'm one of those that has a gazillion books. I've read most of them, but I have a lot on the to read list, and then some on the list like, Why did I buy that again? We have brains that are very interest based. The other thing is our brains are very focused on what's happening in the present moment. And so it can be very hard to create a financial goal for ourselves that's a year, let alone like 3 to 10 years in advance, and really even connect with that. It's hard to conceptualize. And some of us can do it, and sometimes it can just be really hard, or it can be hard to remember in the moment that we have this goal. The other thing is because of our executive functioning differences, that can be what makes it hard to remember to pay bills the same way that other people remember to pay bills. And we used to get bills in the mail. And as soon as I got a bill, I would just write out the check and do it. Thankfully, I had the money because back in the day, we wrote out checks. That's what we did. But I would write out the check and do it. Or at least if I didn't have the money in my account, I would get it all ready. I would write on the back of it, mail on this day, because I knew there'd be money in my account then. And then I would just, that was the thing. I'd have to get myself to remember to mail it. But mostly I did. Now, the cool thing is you can automate your bill pay. So you can just have things automatically withdrawn. It's so helpful, except for those one time payments, right? The other thing I notice is that, and I notice this in myself, right? But I notice a fear of spending money on things that are investing in yourself, things that would actually help you and your ADHD. I notice this in myself and others. But then probably spending that same amount of money on random stuff. It's okay. So here's this thing that could help, but instead, no, I can't afford that. But I can afford to go to Caribou Coffee more often, like every day, which is now super expensive, by the way. It's all coffee is at a coffee shop, especially if you get like a mocha. They're like $8 now. It's insane. So think about $8 a day for even if you just do 20 days a month, that's $160 a month. You're talking what, about 1,100, 1,200 bucks a year, a little more than that, just to get coffee. You could go on a nice vacation for that, right? Or invest in a program that would help you. So I noticed that pattern too, is we're afraid to invest in things that might help us. And as women, we struggle to invest in ourselves. We struggle to put ourselves first. And I've talked about that in some recent episodes too. And we do that with our money. Our money is for everybody else, but not for us. Like I'll go into debt to get my nieces a really nice birthday or Christmas present, but maybe not do that for myself to do something that would help me. Or at least that's what I used to do. Now I'm like, whatever. I need what I need. Budgeting and all that stuff don't tend to work well for ADHDers. And so shaming ourselves about our past attempts doesn't work. And we're going to talk about the past towards the end of my part of this episode. But for now, it's important that you say, you know what? The efforts I've made to date are the efforts I've made to date. They're not good, bad, or whatever. It's just how it was. I did the best I could at the time with what I had. So that's what we're going to do with the past. The next step is to build awareness, to notice the patterns you're doing, to notice, like, how did I get on Amazon? What? Wait, why am I here? And then to stop and be like, why am I buying something right now? What is the intention? And I will tell you, we can have lots of ways that we justify things. And so to pay attention and really get to notice your own patterns of like, how do I justify spending? How do I like convince myself that I need something with that you really don't need? And a part of this might be introducing some friction, both to help you stop long enough to notice the pattern, but then also we talk about we tend to have more impulsive spending. I think it was 4 times more likely to have impulsive spending. And in order to be able to address impulsive spending, first of all, we have to notice when we're doing it. We have to interrupt the pattern. And one thing we need is friction. So James Clear talks about when we're trying to build a habit in his book, Atomic Habits, he talks about reducing the friction. So we want to get the barriers out of the way that might make us less likely to do the habit. But the thing is when we don't want to do something, we want to make that harder to do. So if you're quitting smoking, you don't want to like have cigarettes in every room of your house and your car and at work, right? You want to make it more of a pain in the butt to access that thing you're trying to quit. The thing is we have to spend money. And so it's okay, maybe starting to notice your patterns around like, when do I tend to really go wild? For me, it can be when I'm sitting home at night after a long day and I'm feeling tired And I'm like, oh, it'd be so nice to buy myself something, which is usually a book, but it doesn't come to me like that. I don't think that's probably deep down in the subconscious. Instead, it's, oh, you know what? I really need a new shirt, or I really need this thing that'll help my podcast or that'll help my business. Like we can do that with business stuff too. And so we want to notice the pattern, but then we want to create friction. So we want to make it harder. Certainly, when we have our credit card information saved on our computer or on Amazon or things like that, is not friction. That is making it as easy as possible to spend money, which is why they let you do that, right? Amazon wants your credit card information there because then you don't have to pause and think through entering the credit card information. So when we talk about creating friction, you can delete those things. Although I will tell you, I know my credit cards from memory, so that doesn't help. I mean, it's a little bit more of a pain and it might give you a little bit more time to pause and think. But another thing you could do is on your phone is if you have certain apps that you use like Amazon or other, I don't know if you have like clothing apps. I don't know what people have. But you could use Screen Zen, which is an app we've talked about to not get beyond social media as much. You could probably use that and set it up for those kind of apps too. So that when you know, even I would just set it up for all the time so that it takes a little longer to get into your shopping apps. So you want to create some friction. So it's harder to be able to spend money without thinking about it. And I will tell you that it is really important to be clear on what your finances are. Now, I have tried budgeting over the years. I'm really good at making a spreadsheet, looking at what my expenses are every year or so and being like, okay, yeah, this is what I can afford to spend every month that is outside of my regular bills. And I really don't do a good job of looking at it, right? But what I do is I have a list of things I know come out of my account every month. And if I ever forget where that list is, I can just look back and see what's coming out of my account this month so far, what still has to come out. And then I have an idea at least of what's in my checking. So I'm at least not overdrawing that. And if you're not like a budgeter, at least having some money awareness. I recommend opening your banking apps or your bank account information, trying to look at it. If you can look at it daily, that's great, but at least several times a week so that it stops being scary. Because when your money is scary, that like puts that energy out into the universe that money is scary and it's going to make it harder to attract it to you and to keep it. So you want to dial down the scary on money and looking at your bank accounts. I even force myself to look at my credit cards and loans I have and all that kind of stuff because I'm like, okay, let's get the real picture. And so it's, yep, this is what we have. And it's a great reminder that this is why we're not going to Caribou Coffee today. You can tell I love Caribou Coffee. I seriously, oh my gosh, it's so good. So having awareness of where your money going is really important. And a piece of the method that I was talking about is that certainly automating your bills is an important step because if you can just have things come automatically out of your account, then you won't forget to pay them and then you won't be paying late fees. Okay? I have everything come out right around the like right after the first of the month in the first 5 days because I pay myself once a month for my business. And that way the money is right there. So all the things that have to be paid come out right after I'm paid. So that way most of it comes out. I think there's one thing like my student loans. And then I think, I don't know, like a disability insurance policy that comes out later in the month. But I know what those are. And so I know to look for them. The other thing that's important to realize is that, okay, let me back up. There are all kinds of things that people say we need as people with ADHD, but also just people around their money. And they say that we need to budget. And I can't tell you if you need that or not. I know that I have spent the better part of my adult life trying to get myself to do it, and I'm just not consistent with it. And if you are someone who would do well with a budget and using a budgeting app, then there are ways to do that. I know a lot of people like Mint. That's something you can use. I've tried so many over the years. And part of that is with ADHD, we like novelty because it makes it interesting. So a lot of times we'll use one for a while and then we trail off because it gets boring and monotonous. And so if you're going to use a budgeting app and you find one that's interesting at the beginning, it's important to find a way to keep it interesting because we have interest-based nervous systems. So you want to keep finding novelties or making it fun. So maybe you listen to a certain fun kind of music that you like when you do your budgeting app, or maybe use body doubling, right? Have someone else be there that is doing a task, whether it's also financial or whether it's something else, so that you have that other person there to help hold the energy of doing something. You can make a challenge for yourself, but the challenge probably needs to be more short term because remember, if your challenge is, I want to save $1,000 by the end of the year, your ADHD brain, that maybe you can do it. I don't know. Most of us, that's going to be really hard. It's going to feel out of reach. Where if we're like, I want to save $100 this week, or I want to save $20 this week, or $10 this week, that's a little more manageable. But you can create a challenge because that can make things interesting. So, we've talked about a lot of different pieces. I also want to talk about some of the emotional stuff. It is really important to give yourself some grace for learning these things because with ADHD, really lots of tasks can be hard to do, but for whatever reason, money stuff is tough. And I think because for a lot of us, it's not flashy. Like tracking your expenses isn't exactly like, ooh, that's so exciting. I did love my accounting classes in high school and a couple of the ones I had in college, although once I got into cost accounting, I was like sleeping through class. It was really boring to me, which is why I switched majors. But for some, that was interesting to me at one time, but for some, it's never interesting. And it's just, we come by this struggle honestly. And so it's important to give yourself grace because, again, remember, if we're stressing ourselves out about money, we're dysregulating our nervous systems. And that is the wrong kind of energy to put out there around money. But also, when our nervous systems are dysregulated, we are going to make decisions that come from protection and that come from lack and scarcity and fear instead of decisions that come from a more grounded place. So, as you're working with your money stuff, it's important that you are noticing what comes up for you emotionally and that you're working with whatever that is so that when you are working with your money or spending money, you're doing it from more of a regulated, centered place. And if you're like, how do I regulate my nervous system? We've got a podcast for that. So you can check out, there's an older episode, I don't know which one, where we talk about nervous system regulation, but basically getting out of your fight or flight response or shutdown response. And to just to name, since I mentioned nervous system stuff, it's not even possible to be regulated 100% of the time. The goal isn't to never get into your fight or flight or shutdown responses. Those responses are needed to help protect you and to help you navigate the world. It's just that we want to be able to bounce back from those states when we're in them, especially if we notice that we're in them and we really don't need to be, because those states were created for more life threatening danger. And we don't need that. Maybe our body feels like it's life threatening to open our credit card statement because we're like, oh shit. The reality is, in that moment at least, you are safe enough to rest, digest, and connect. From there, you can regulate your nervous system. If you're like, how do I regulate? Again, there's a podcast for that. Going for a walk is a quick tip. Connecting with your breath, another quick tip. Going outside in nature, one last quick tip for nervous system regulation. All right. So I want to name two more things. One is a pattern you may have that I almost forgot to mention. So I'm going to put it in here, is something called aspirational spending. So have you ever been like, I'm totally going to start juicing? And then you research all these juicers and then you buy this really expensive juicer and you use it twice and then you're done. Or you're like, wow, I am going to get into kayaking. Yes, that is what I'm going to do. And you buy a kayak, you use it a few times, and then it sits in your garage. And maybe it's not a big purchase like a kayak, or maybe it's not something like a juicer, but we all have this where we see a version of ourselves that we're like, oh, it'd be nice to be that kind of person. And so we buy some stuff to help us be that kind of person. When the reality is that's not who we are. And so if you notice yourself doing that, you can pay attention to, oh, huh, okay, what's that about? What do I like about people who do that? What of that am I already that I can embody? And is there a way to test it out before I go buy something? Another thing is to have some fun money or money for spontaneity. So, because we struggle with impulse spending, If we completely restrict and limit, we're like, that's it, no more buying anything that is anything other than a necessity. If I say that to you, what do you notice your body does? It wants to turn off this podcast, I'm sure, but it's not going to happen, right? So instead, find a way to create a fun money fund or a spontaneity money fund where you can just that is what you get to spend your money on, and that is your like $50 for a month, maybe up to 100 if you have that kind of money available to you, and that is your fun money, and then once it's gone for the month, it's gone. That might at least cause you to be a little bit more intentional about the things that you purchase for yourself. That said, I can hear people saying, oh yeah, I would spend that like on day one and then have to get through the last days and just keep spending. And that might be true. You can make an effort at it, or you can be like, that just isn't a strategy for me because not everything is going to work for everybody. One thing that I use a lot are wish lists, and Amazon makes it convenient for you. But I also have wish lists on a notes app in my phone of things that I really want to buy. And a lot of times I'll put things on there. And if I'm still thinking about said thing like a month later, I might go back and purchase it. But if I'm not thinking about it, it comes off the list the next time I look at the list. You know, I'm reading the book Rage Becomes Her, and I'm reading the copy from the library. And it's on my Kindle, but it's a book that I'm reading slowly over time because when I read it, I feel pretty furious for a while, and I've got to get my energy back on track so I'm not walking around the world in my rage, which anger is great and it is an appropriate emotion. And I also need to function. So it's a book that I'm like, okay, but the library wants it back. And I found a little trick that's probably not kosher with the library, but if you put your Kindle on airplane mode, when you borrow a library book, it still returns the library book when it's supposed to be returned, but you can still access it because it's still on your Kindle. That's probably not a good thing to recommend to people. It's probably stealing in some sense of the word, and I've learned to do it so I can quick finish books. But what I'm noticing with this one is that it's just going to take a long time to read. And one, I want to make sure the author gets a cut from me loving this book so much. But two, I want to be able to download additional books on my Kindle, and I can't right now until I finish that book. For me, I'm like, oh, this is the book I want. I want to get it. So I thought about that. Gosh, within the first week of having it, which was, I think it would have been 4 weeks ago, I was like, yeah, I really should buy this book. I think this would be a good one. I'm like, nope, you buy too many books, you're not going to buy it. And you can see if you need it or really want it. And first of all, I find myself highlighting so many pages in my Kindle, which is a nice feature because then you can download that or email that to yourself and get a copy of the list of things that you've saved. However, I'm only like 20% through the book, and it's already been a month since I initially checked it out, and I'm still really wanting a copy of it. So last night I let myself order a copy of it. And because I no longer let myself just buy random stuff on Amazon to um, get the free shipping, I have a list of things that I actually need on the regular that I can order from Amazon to bump that up. So for me, that is certain food things or things for my cats, or I got Nugget, which by the way, if you're vegan and you want a good vegan Parmesan cheese, I love Nugget. Really good. This is not an ad for that, by the way. I just think it's really good. It does have a little texture to it more than just regular grated Parmesan cheese. I just find it so tasty. Anyway, so I did that. But that can be a trick is if you're still thinking about it a month later, maybe it's not an impulse spend anymore. It doesn't mean you need it, but it comes from a different place, right? And certainly in my work, I've been citing that book a lot, especially in my private practice where I work with women who have trauma histories and then often are married to a lot of them are heterosexual cisgendered. And so they're married to heterosexual cisgendered men. Many are white men who were socialized in a way that has them not really contributing in an equitable way to the household. And so I find myself citing this book a lot, so it might be helpful if I had access to it. Yes, a justification, but also something I've thought about for a month, so I allowed myself to get it. Wish lists, great strategy to try and help yourself. I thought I had one more, but I think that's all I've got for you. I want to talk about the last piece because this is the biggest piece. And I'm going to actually have Ashlee talk to you about it herself by re airing that podcast episode to go with this one. It's our money stories, it's our limiting beliefs about money. And the fact of the matter, for a lot of us, it's trauma about money. And Dr. Ashlee Geer is a friend and colleague of mine. She is a former trauma therapist who now is a nomadic CEO. Her life is so cool. Oh my gosh, her life is so cool. She travels the world with her partner and because she can work from anywhere because she's a digital CEO. And so she offers programs and all that. And they just go live in different places. Isn't that just the coolest life? And she's brilliant when it comes to moving up beyond the limiting beliefs around money. And limiting beliefs are those things that you tell yourself, those stories you tell yourself that may or may not be true anymore, may have been true for you at one time. It might be that you have parts of you that have been trying to protect you around money in some way, but now it's no longer working and it's keeping you stuck. And without further ado, we will go to that episode. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Today is a really special episode. We have our second guest, and the best part is she's a friend and colleague of mine who's going to talk to us about empowering wealth today. Her name is Dr. Ashlee Geer. And Ashlee, I'm so excited you're here today. I'm just so happy you're here. Do you want to maybe share a little bit about yourself?
Oh, Jen, I am so excited to be here with you today.
I'm
You
so
are just such a
happy.
delightful light in this world. And I'm so glad to be able to talk to you and your audience about wealth and about wealth creation. So, I'm Dr. Ashlee Geer, and I'm a former psychologist who used to specialize in trauma and anxiety and the mind body connection. And I transitioned into being an entrepreneur about 10 years ago, building a business from scratch. And at this point, I travel the world. I currently live in Bali, and I
So
really help
awesome.
people embody a feeling of safety and creating wealth and generating more wealth and success in their life and creating a business that lights them up and feels easy and playful and like a video game, and creating wealth from this place that I get to create something in a conscious way that supports the world and becoming a better place. And by creating more wealth and success, everything around me gets better, not just for me, but for everyone in my life, in the world around me. And it's just such a fun, awesome thing to do. And I love every day of my life.
Yeah, your life is awesome. Ashley's like all over the world. I'm like, where in the world are you right now? She's, oh, I'm in Australia. Oh, I'm in Bali. I'm just going everywhere. I can't remember where you're going next month, but you're like going everywhere. So it's pretty cool.
Uh,
So anyway, I'm super excited to have Ashlee here. I've been in her Empowering Wealth program, which I have to say is amazing. We'll talk more about that at the end. You make things so much easier, Ashlee. You make things flow and make sense. And really, I've found a lot of shifts in myself since working with you on empowering wealth. And I wanted to share that wisdom with my listeners because it's such beautiful stuff. And so one of the things I want to talk about first, because I think this is where a lot of people probably are, is, and I know this is where I was when I first enrolled in your course, is what are some of the things that keep people stuck? What are some of the limiting beliefs that are common for people? Because a lot of times we'll be doing all this stuff. This is what I noticed in myself. This is why I came to your program. I actually knew Ashlee from somewhere else, another program we were both in. Although we go way back, we turns out we went to grad school, right? You weren't doing your PhD at St. Thomas. You were doing your
my
master's at,
master's.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So randomly, we were in this program and we learned that that we were both doing graduate school at the same time. We graduated on the same rainy day from the University of St.
Yep.
Thomas in 2005, which is insane. Me in social work and you in psychology, but still, it's just so crazy. But we didn't know each other until we met in another program. But
15 years later. How
15
crazy.
years later. Isn't that crazy? That's just like insane. It's totally random. I love stuff like that. Like that kind of stuff just lights me up. But I decided to engage with Ashlee's course because what I noticed is I was doing all this work and I was putting great stuff out there and people weren't buying from me. And I'm like, what is this? And I started to recognize some signs that part of what was getting in the way was my own issues around money, that I was putting my issues on money onto potential buyers from me. And I saw that was impacting the energy I was putting out, and it was making it less likely for people to engage with my programs or whatever it is. And so I'd love if you could talk a bit about what you notice about how that shows up, maybe some limiting beliefs, because I that's what I have found so invaluable about working with you. And I wonder if you could speak to some of those common limiting beliefs.
Yeah, absolutely. What we're talking about here is really money mindset. It's our entire kind of philosophy, beliefs, emotions, the way we interact with money, the way we feel that money has a presence in our life. The problem is that for so many of us, we basically give money all of the power. We believe that we will be happy once we have money. We will be successful once we have money. We have value once we have money. But that ends up becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy because then we're constantly seeking the thing, money, in order to validate our value. And it's by holding our value that we actually can create more money, ironically. So we end
Yeah,
up putting it words, if that makes sense.
that's
And so
fascinating.
what ends up feeding into this so often are there's multiple layers, but one of, like you were saying, one of the key points is are these limiting beliefs, and I'm very specific about calling them limiting beliefs versus money blocks. You may have heard the term money blocks
Can you
before,
say a bit
right?
more about that? Yeah, I've heard the term money blocks. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so money blocks and limiting beliefs are the same thing, but I believe in the power of language. Our subconscious mind believes everything we say to it. And so when I say the word block to you, what comes to mind?
It's walls. It's like
Yep.
keeping things away, keeping things out.
It's something that stopped it. It's something that is can't get around it.
Insurmountable. Yes.
Right.
Impenetrable, whatever that word is.
Yeah. And so when we call something a money block, that means I can't get around it and I can't solve it and I can't find a solution to move and flow around it. When we call something a limit, guess what? Limits are made to be broken. We
Huh?
can move through that. And so just by shifting that simple phrase of from a money block to a limiting belief around money, suddenly I have opportunities to solve this and to find solutions and to find new ways of being that create all this opportunity for me to have the sales that I want, for me to make more money, for me to break through my income ceiling that I've been stuck at, for me to stop under earning, or whatever it might be that I've felt has been this sticky thing that I've been encountering. Same with that word sticky versus stuck. Stuck, I'm
Yeah.
stuck. Sticky, I'm
Yeah.
moving forward.
Yeah, sticky is yeah, there is. Language does have so much power, and you and I both with our backgrounds know that there's neurobiological impacts of the language that we speak. So that matters. I heard you say another word in there and it was income ceiling, and I know that's something I was really struggling with. I wonder if you could speak do you see that a lot with people that show up? What does that tend to show up like in your work when you see people
I
with
see that a ton.
yeah.
So basically what happens is, we have an internal thermostat for what
Mm.
feels safe to us. And that exists in terms of happiness, that exists in terms of wealth and money. And so when we have this internal thermostat, the ceiling at which it feels safe, when we exceed that ceiling, our subconscious mind, part of us will pull us back below that ceiling and we'll go down again. And let's say we hit our 5K month or our 10K month or whatever it might be, and that's exceeded what we've done before. If part of us doesn't feel safe creating that because of micro traumas from the past, because of limiting beliefs, because of these deep emotions that we feel around money, because of fear we're going to lose it, whatever it might be, what happens is we pull ourselves back below that feeling into that safety zone again.
Mm.
That's what an income ceiling is. It's a safety zone. And then we wonder why we can't break through. We can't break through because of all of these different things that we're talking about today, like the limiting beliefs, like all of these stories from the past, all of the stuff that isn't us, the subconscious junk in our trunk, as I like to call it.
Yeah, yeah. And I wonder if that could ever look like not just under earning, but also overspending when there's too much money. Because I'll catch myself doing that. I'm like, oh, I'm doing pretty well. And then I'll go spend all this money. I'm like, what in the hell was I thinking? Like, you know what I mean? I could use this to pay for this or to put some more money in savings or to, I don't know, whatever. And instead I'll go, I don't know, spend $200 at Target on nothing. No offense to
Right?
Target. I love Target. My brother-in-law works at Target corporate, so it supports my nieces. That's great. But I'd rather not spend 200 unnecessary dollars at Target and instead use that money more intentionally. And so I wonder, can it show up that way too?
Absolutely. It can absolutely show up that way. It can
Mm.
absolutely show up in terms of going into behaviors that are not supporting us, things like gambling or overspending or
Oh.
wasting money. Maybe you go out and you suddenly buy the latest gadget that breaks the next week or whatever it might be because you're so used to not having money that A, you want to spend it before it runs away and you lose it. So you're like, that comes from that lack mindset of, I don't think I'm going to be able to hold on to it. Secondly, it might come from a belief that you want to treat yourself and that's the only way to feel good instead of feeling good while you're creating the money. But thirdly, yes, it's another way to keep yourself within your income ceiling. And we oftentimes will find ourselves suddenly a new bill comes up. Why is my car breaking down all of a sudden that I have money? Why is this happen? Does that ever happen to you?
Yes. Oh my God. Not to me so much anymore, but I have clients that I'm like, oh my gosh, in fact, the guy who's working on my garage, that keeps happening. And I'm like, this dude,
Right?
like, what is
Right?
going on? Like, it's one thing after another. And I'm like, there's some mindset shit going on there. It's like, because that, how does that many things happen to one person? Like,
Exactly, exactly. And sometimes, of course, things happen in the
yes,
world, and you have
yes,
to understand that sometimes
yes.
things happen. But other times, we're running into the wall face first and wondering why our face hurts.
Yes. Yeah, there's certainly times and reasons stuff. Yes, stuff happens. But yeah, sometimes it's totally this money mindset stuff.
It's like you're saying, you end
Fascinating.
up going out and doing those impulsive behaviors, those impulsive old school behaviors that for folks, particularly with ADHD, we tend to really like that dopamine hit,
That's
that
what I was
feeling
just
of like,
thinking.
ooh, right? And spending can do that a little bit. Sorry, I'm in Australia. You can bet on like horses at the bar or out having a beer and you can bet on a horse at the bar. And so you go do that and suddenly you talk to somebody next to you and they've lost $2,000 and you're like, what is going
What?
on? Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. But these are the kind of impulsive behaviors that we have where we go out and we buy dinner for all of our friends because we suddenly can. And it's how could I have invested that in my business to create more wealth?
Yeah.
And how can I also feed my dopamine system so that I get the sort of hits that I feel like are really important to me, perhaps with ADHD, because those hits
Right.
are important to us. We
Right.
need to be able to feed that pleasure and feeling good, as well as investing in ourselves and our future and a solid rocks foundation where we can create wealth and we're not constantly just stuck beneath our income ceiling, which is where we
Yeah.
started.
That word pleasure, I've heard you use that a lot. And for a lot of people, I don't think we link money and pleasure. I think we think only rich people link money and pleasure. Like they go on
Right.
these lavish vacations and whatever. And I think for a lot of people, money can feel stressful. And I wonder about making those shifts because certainly if we view money as stressful, then money will be stressful. And
Yep.
so,
100%. Like this is really the core of my philosophy with everything that I work with my clients on is that we have to motivate ourselves from a place of pleasure, from a place of play, from a place of fun. Because
mhm.
if we don't, whatever it is that we're creating is going to feel hard, heavy, like it's going to be hard work. And guess what happens? When we feel like something is going to be hard and heavy and a lot of hard work, whether it's success in our business or generating more income, our subconscious mind is going to feel as though that's a stressor. I don't want that. That's going to make me suffer. That's going to be horrible. I've got to keep myself safe from that. So I'm going to hold myself back from making more money, from being more successful, because this is now a threat because it feels
Yeah.
hard, heavy. I'm going to be overwhelmed. I'm going to be burnt out. I'm going to be super stressed out and pull my hair out. It's not worth it. When
Right.
we motivate ourselves from these feeling good, from reward, from pleasure, what happens is it becomes so much easier to create these things, to create wealth, to move through these income ceilings, to create the success in our business, to make sales, all of this stuff. And our energy is different with all of these things as well. But you bring up a good point of how do you actually do that when we've been convinced our whole life that that pleasure is only for if I get to go on vacation for a week. That's
Yeah.
the only way that money feels pleasurable.
Yeah.
Uh, We need to focus on the micro savorings of our financial reality in the here and now, which
Yeah.
allow us to create pleasure from the small little wins and gratitudes of what we're experiencing. So I know you and I were just talking about how much we love coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go to the coffee shop and you get that beautiful mocha and you just sit there and you go, this is the best $5 I have ever spent. Oh my gosh, this is so good. And that is pleasure in spending money. That is pleasure in what money brings you. That
Yeah.
$5, finding that dollar on the ground and being like, yes,
Yeah.
awesome. Celebrating every dime that comes into your bank account. We look over the small little pleasures that are available to us. And how often do we save things like the nice candle that we bought at the shop that
Mm-hmm.
we could go and savor and enjoy? And it doesn't cost a lot of money
Mm-mm.
to enjoy what money can bring into our lives.
And you make a good point because a lot of times when our ADHD impulsivity shows up, if we're not mindful and we're not working with it in certain ways, I think people can find themselves buying lots and lots of stuff or big stuff or expensive stuff and overlooking how much pleasure we can get from that. In my mind, Caribou Coffee Mocha, because they use real chocolate chips. Come on. Caribou Coffee owes me like affiliate money, by the way. I mention them all the time. But anyway, like good Minnesota company. But whatever it is, right? Like when we don't savor those things, I think that's when we need Amazon to be dropping shit off at our house every day just to get a dopamine hit. Whereas maybe if we were able to appreciate those smaller pleasures, we wouldn't need to drop a few $100s at Target or Amazon.
Absolutely. And if you think you're really the expert in ADHD, but at least with my own experience with it myself, I'm undiagnosed. But from the time I was about 5, it's been
Right.
like she is way too loud and energetic. And oh my God, she won't sit still. And will she look at her paper and not scribble on the walls? The thing. But anyway, to get back to what I was saying is,
That's why we're
I
friends.
think, yeah, right? Because we jam this way.
Right. Anyway, carry on.
Is that I think that we're always in a race to find the next exciting thing, the next
Yeah.
sensation to experience,
Yeah.
because we're not taking time to actually fully experience the sensations that are available to us.
And you and I are both trauma experts too. And so, one of the things that is really common with ADHD and also autism is low interoception, which is that ability to notice our sensations and name them or label them or have a sense of them. And so, it makes sense that in the work we do in my programs, we build interoception actually, because it is something that we need to enjoy, to be even be able to notice and enjoy the pleasure just in the first place, right?
Absolutely. That's so interesting to think about how not being aware of what's going on inside of us becomes this problematic factor that results in us constantly acting impulsively and doing things which aren't in our best
Yeah.
interest, whether it comes to money or our businesses or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
that's so interesting.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And one of the things I've talked about on the podcast, so some of my listeners might be like, "Yes, Jen, we know you think this." But one of the things I've shared is I'm really curious about the like chicken egg thing with this because we know that with ADHD, especially if you were undiagnosed, there is a lot of trauma. And it may not be like trauma that people go, oh my gosh, like childhood sexual abuse or something. If you said that happened to you, people would be like, oh yeah, that's trauma. And the things that happen with someone with ADHD, the constant criticism and shaming, and why can't you just do this? And you can pay attention here, but you can't pay attention there. And why is scribbling on the walls, Ashlee, or putting me on the chalkboard in 8th grade for talking? Like legit, that happened.
Yeah.
And all that is traumatic. And like you were saying, our body doesn't know the difference between a tiger or a money mindset thing. So what I think is like, how much of it is people on the autism spectrum and ADHD have interoceptive issues because that's inherent in those neurodivergences. Neurodivergencies. I don't know if you understand anyway, whatever. Or is it a function of trauma? Because we know that interoception is low in people with complex trauma histories. So I don't know, but that's something I think a lot about.
Well, it's really interesting because I would, at least to me, it makes sense that we would lose trust in ourselves when we're constantly told not to trust ourselves
Yeah,
because
when
we're
you're told you're a
wrong.
dumbass, eventually you start believing you're a dumbass.
Exactly. And so then you stop tuning in and you stop being aware because you think other people have the tickets on what's going on inside of you and you don't. They understand it better than you do. So
Right.
why bother?
Why would I
Yep.
trust my internal messages? I think,
And you're so right when it comes. Sorry,
oh,
go ahead.
go ahead.
You're so right in terms of these little micro traumas that occur to us. The minute you said having my name written on the board in the eighth grade, I'm like, oh, I think that happened to me. I remember in fifth grade, the teacher encouraged everyone in my class to make fun of me and tell me I was nosy because I was paying too much attention to what everyone else was doing. She encouraged everyone to flick their nose at me and go, nosy, the teacher.
Cool.
And right. And so what that taught me for a long time was don't ask questions.
Right. Yeah.
And these are the kind of micro traumas that occur to us because of our behavioral stuff, because of who we were in the world, that impact us
Right.
on all these crazy ways. Because even something like that I just shared, how would that impact money? That would impact money because I'm not going to get curious about my money because somehow I think that makes me too nosy, or maybe I'm digging in where I'm not supposed to dig in. And we just taught these things and we don't even realize that they can have impact on money, on success, on all of these different levels
Yeah.
because it doesn't seem related. How is a teacher saying nosy related to money?
Because it doesn't have to be that
Curiosity.
you had trauma with money. It could be,
Right.
right? Like it could be that like your family lost their house when you were young or something, or you grew up in poverty. But it could be
Right.
this, right?
In fact, most of the time it isn't related to money. Most of the time it's related to like your
Oh.
parents got divorced, or you know what I mean, or you were made fun of in the schoolyard, or you fear that you're going to be judged because you were unpopular when you were 15 years old,
Wait,
or
walk us
whatever it
through some
might
of that.
be.
Walk us through some of that. So like your parents get divorced and you have money issues. Say more. Like how could that
So
track it for us?
fear of abandonment is a huge thing when it comes to money. So if you had someone leave your life when you were young, let's say through your parents getting divorced, let's say through an illness, somebody died, let's say even something like someone gets mental illness and they're no longer really available to you emotionally,
Yeah.
you get convinced that good things in your life will leave. And if money feels like a good thing, you will convince yourself that money will leave too. So why bother making more?
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
That's huge. I want to
Yep.
ask everyone listening and being like, did you hear that? Like, that's huge. That's huge. Okay, now track
Absolutely.
one more down for me. Track one more down. You're afraid people don't like you in high school, or it was another thing you said. Like, you said something like that.
Yeah. So
Help me track that
yeah,
one. Is
so you're
that
15
related to
years old.
abandonment?
You're 15 years old, you're unpopular in school, maybe you get a little bit bullied, or maybe people made fun of you because you're into, I don't know, anime or something like
Right.
that. What you're learning at that point is that who I am and how I show up in the world isn't of value unless other people approve of me, because unfortunately when you're 15, that's how you feel. And
Right.
so how would that impact you as an entrepreneur and earning money? You would pin your value in the world upon other people's approval and how other people are reflecting your value back to you instead of holding it within yourself, which would reflect in your pricing, which would reflect in your ability to hold your value when you tell people how much you charge, which would reflect in your value, your ability to invest in yourself, in your
Yeah.
personal growth. It would reflect in your ability to invest in stocks because maybe you don't trust yourself because those people told me that I was wrong in who I am at this tender age. And part of me still believes them, even though my conscious brain doesn't believe it. This little 15-year-old inside of me believes it, which you do a lot of that work with the different
Yeah. With
pieces.
IFS, internal family systems, and the
Yeah.
parts work. And it's interesting because I've worked with that 15-year-old part a lot around this. And so as you're talking, I'm like, this is me. And I still sometimes undercharge, which is something that y'all are going to get an email about soon. So listen up. But anyway, no, but
I love it.
that's fascinating because that is interesting. I think about, I wasn't exactly like the most popular of 15-year-olds. Didn't drink and was smart and did well in school and prioritized learning. Those aren't things, and was a bit of a know-it-all. So those tend not to be things that make you popular.
It's interesting, just as an aside,
Yeah.
I feel like entrepreneurs in general have a greater majority of not being popular when they were younger.
Really? That's
I don't,
fascinating.
that's just, it's
No, that's
anecdotal,
interesting
my
because
belief.
I'm thinking of someone we both know who's in that situation. He talks about it all the time. Huh. That is
And I
fascinating.
think it's because it trains us to follow our own path. As scary as it is, we have been following our own path from that point.
Okay, now
And entrepreneurs follow their own path.
if you're listening to that, please comment. I want to hear I want to hear comments about that or read comments about that in the podcast. That is because this is all for female entrepreneurs mostly. There might be some other outliers listening, but if that's you, I want to hear that. That's fascinating.
So then, I'm sorry, I'm just literally thinking of some of this for the first time, but then how interesting is it to think that perhaps it's our shared traumas that have created the opportunity for us all to grab entrepreneurship and influence the world the way that we can see it being created because we've experienced these things in our past.
Wow. And you know what that's profound. That's super profound. But you know what it makes me think of is something I hear you talk a lot about is this idea of building conscious wealth. And to me, that's your mission. That is how you're changing the world through the process you're just talking about. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because that really helped me, the building conscious wealth. Can you talk about that a little?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That is 100% my philosophy. And it's why I do this money mindset work with people, with entrepreneurs. And frankly, it's with conscious entrepreneurs who are out there making a difference because I believe that the more we get money in the hands of people who are conscious, who are good hearted, who are just these amazing beams of light in the world, the more we elevate the consciousness of the whole planet, the more we change the world. Because each time that we create wealth ourselves, we become a beacon, we become the ripple that moves outwards and changes everything around us. What I mean by that in practical reality is when I make more money, I can pay more fair wages. I can hire people who will make a difference in their communities. I can invest in charities that I care about. I can do things that matter. I truly believe that there's a paradigm shift between this old industrial revolution, you build wealth on the backs of other people and on their blood,
Yeah.
sweat, and tears, to a conscious revolution of building wealth through equity, through sharing, through collaboration, through community. And when we get more money into the hands of people who believe that and know that and will impact the world with that, the whole freaking world changes.
It's just like mind blowing. It's just mind blowing. That was a huge thing for me. First of all, before I talk about that adjustment for me, I do want to say Ashlee isn't talking about trickle down economics here. She's not talking about that. That comes from the Industrial Revolution. That comes from the patriarchy. That comes from yeah, we promise we'll give you good stuff if you do the bulk of the work. That's not what happened. You're talking, Ashlee, my understanding is you're talking about people who have good hearts, who have full intention of helping people in their business. That's why they're going into business, is to help people. And then the people they help aren't just their clients or customers or whatever word people use, but also the people that work in the business with them or for them, if you want to use that language, whatever language fits for people. But that's different, right? That you're talking about two different. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because when we're coming from this place of I'm building community, I'm building collaboration, not just with the people who I'm serving through
Hmm.
my products and services or whatever it is that I'm bringing to the world, but through the people that I am working with, through the people that I am actually going and purchasing things from, because now I
Hmm.
can purchase from people who are creating things in conscious ways as well. And I can choose where my dollars go towards as well. Then it's not about, oh, you'll eventually get 3 pennies on my dollar. It's about my whole dollar is going to go towards things that I care about and I'm passionate about and that make a difference. And that
Yeah.
means the whole everything changes. Yeah.
And that changes the world. And we need more of that. So if you're listening, you're like, that sounds amazing. Keep listening because at the end, we're going to talk about how you can work with Ashlee. The other thing I want to talk about is when I heard you talk about conscious wealth, that really helped me shift a long-standing money mindset I have, which is that people who are rich or wealthy are sleazy. And this was truly keeping me stuck because I really saw how it was. It was one of the reasons I came to you. I didn't know what the limiting belief was, but this was the big one for me, one of the big ones, which is that like people who make a lot of money are sleazy and they don't care about others and they're selfish and that they maybe they were nice at one point and now they're assholes. And so I wonder if you could talk about that limiting belief a little bit. And because and how that relates to the conscious wealth, because that was huge for me. That was huge for me.
And it is such a huge thing for folks. There's a couple layers there. One is that a lot of times we have these limiting beliefs, and sometimes due to experiences from when we're younger, about people who are greedy and selfish and make money because we've had experience with people who are greedy and selfish and make money. Let's just be real. Some people are greedy and selfish who have a lot
Yeah.
of money. But let's also be real. There are crap load of people who have a lot of money and aren't greedy and selfish. There's people like the Gates, the Warren Buffetts of the world, the Oprahs of the world, who haven't they like all signed a contract that said they're going to donate a certain percentage of their income
Have
once
they?
they pass or something like that? I think they have. They're all kind of part of this agreement that they've just said this is all going to be going to charity. This is going to be making a difference in the world. Like there are so many exceptions. That
Or
can't
like,
be the rule.
yeah. Or like I know Brene Brown and Glennon Doyle and Abby Wambach, they all have the sorry, Abby, if you ever listen to this, I know I butchered your name. But they being hopeful. But they all have I think it's called Together Rising, right? Like they have this organization that they don't take any costs away from the donations. And they were helping the people in Maui and I can't remember who else there's just so many people they help. But there are people who have a lot of money who do really wonderful things.
Really wonderful things. And here is the foundational belief that underlies that people who make money are selfish and greedy
Mm-hmm.
is that it is you said it. You said maybe they used to be nice, but the money made them that way.
Yeah, that was my
It,
belief.
yep. Is that we believe that money changes us. We
Mm-hmm.
believe that money is going to make us into a money hungry monster or ruthless or build on the backs of other people or not care about other people. But here is the truth. And I want you guys to really take this in. Money just makes you more who you actually are.
Say that again.
Money just makes you more of who you really are. It doesn't
Whoa.
make you different. You don't have to be a different person to make money to begin with either, but it just makes you more of who you are.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that means if you're a good person and you've got all this like amazing shit to pour out into the world,
Yeah.
that means that's just going to get even bigger and bolder and even like more profound. And you're going to make a bigger impact and you're going to make so much more, so many more ripples and so much more excitement and so much more passion in your own life and the lives around you because that's who you are and that's your truth. And money will
Wow.
empower you to do that. It won't make you
Right.
into something else.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow, that is so profound. It's true though. It's true because I think even like of my own self, right? Like when I have more money, I increase how much I donate places.
Yep.
And I shop a lot less at Amazon when I have more money. I do because I don't agree with the way that company functions.
And you don't have to because it's the only thing you can afford or whatever. You can,
Right.
yep.
I was thinking about that the other day. I don't want to put a limiting belief on anyone, but I was like, It's truly a privilege for me to, I don't remember what it was I was doing, but I was like buying something that was better for the environment than the alternative. And I was like, that is really a privilege that I can have that. What's the word I want? Not value, but principle just to die on. You know what I mean? It is in a lot of ways.
Absolutely.
Because I think of
It's,
some of
it
my
empowers
clients.
you.
Yeah.
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 So go
Who
ahead.
I think about some of my clients in my private practice who are maybe on disability or something like that, who they can't, it's, yeah, Jen, that would be really, I don't ever suggest that to them, but yeah, it would be really nice to be able to have the no paper towels that I have and just wash them, but they have a disability and so it's too much work. Or it would be really nice to be able to shop at bookshop.org and support small shop owners. I think a lot of them are Black bookshop owners too. And that'd be great. But if I want a book, I got to get it from Amazon or Walmart, which is, I'm not judging anyone who does that. And we know that there is not really what seems like conscious wealth to me in those places.
Exactly. And when we, I think a lot of times we think when we build wealth, we're taking that's another really big limiting belief. We're taking from other people. We're
Yeah.
taking from other
Yeah.
people to build our own. And instead realizing that actually when we build wealth, when we have something of value to bring to the world, we're actually contributing to the world, not only to the lives of the people that we're of service to, but then to where we spend our dollars.
It's like that whole thing. It's not a pie. Like when someone's doing well, that
Yeah.
doesn't mean other people have to do bad. It's not a pie.
And that's the foundation of that lack mindset versus abundance mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Lack comes from the idea that for me to win, someone else has to lose.
Yeah. Yeah.
Abundance comes from the idea that we can all win together.
Yeah. So much of that scarcity mindset to me, and I've got a feeling you're going to agree too, as a trauma therapist, former, because now you're an entrepreneur fully. I see so much of that scarcity mindset. And it's not always about money, it's even about time and resources. And let's not go down the political path, but like political bullshit. There's so much of the scarcity mindset. And to me, it just looks like people acting out their trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you have to think about this will get me on a soapbox. It is a way to keep people in line because people are easier to control when they're afraid.
Yeah, that's totally
And so
true.
when we're
And people are afraid when they feel
afraid
like
of not
there's not
having,
enough.
yep, when there's not enough money, not enough resources, not enough love, not enough whatever, we're hoarding and we're siloing
And then instead of working
our resources.
together,
Correct.
we're
Because
working
when we work together,
against.
that's when we're in our power.
Yeah. And then we see it as a pie instead of something we all share and how we can lift each other up. Like those kids going into the circle together to get the fruit, right? Like you've seen that. I don't know if it's a meme or something.
No,
There's
I actually don't.
oh,
So.
it's really cool. It's like this thing where there's this group of kids and I believe they're in Africa. I don't want to assume, but I'm pretty sure they were in Africa. And they put a basket of fruit in the middle and they said, whoever gets there first gets it. And the kids held hands and all went in together to share the basket of
Oh,
fruit.
that's gonna make me cry.
I know, but it's like
Yeah.
those kids, like they get it. It's like we are in this together. It's not a pie. And I'm sure there was less fruit. One kid could have had more fruit in it, but their point was you can't enjoy your fruit if your friend next to you is starving.
And the irony is that the fruit's gonna go rotten if you hoard it yourself.
Oh, yeah. Oh, boy, I had some thoughts there coming to my head about money hoarding and some of what we see, but that might go down, that might go
Right.
off the rails fast if we go there. So we'll keep it to here, but
No, but as a good aside, though, that's part of that money flow and that conscious wealth is we spend our money in places that matter to us. We don't hoard it. We don't say, I have to keep this safe because it will never come back because we have that internal belief in knowing that it is generative because it's always in flow and it's totally abundant and we actually trust our ability to create that.
yeah.
And like you said, not siloing it actually
Yeah.
serves that conscious wealth creation as well.
I wonder if you could speak a little bit to, because as someone with ADHD myself, and I know you're undiagnosed ADHD also, and sometimes I struggle with the difference between when I'm living in the flow of money and abundance and when I am spending when maybe it would not be a good idea.
Mm,
Like,
yeah.
how would I know
So
the difference?
something that I think a lot about is hedonism versus pleasure.
Ooh, say more about that.
Hedonism is when we were basically going out there and you're just feeding every whim that you really want, and you're just like doing whatever you're
Like
eating
gluttony.
potato chips on the couch in your underwear because that's what feels really good at this moment, right? But does that actually feel good? What is the effects of that choice? Is it actually pleasurable tomorrow when I've spent all day in my underwear eating potato chips yesterday? Do I feel good tomorrow? Does
Probably not.
tomorrow me get to benefit from that? Or does today me just eating potato chips right at the second only the one that benefits from that? When we
Mm.
understand sort of the breadth of and the depth of our choices, and we
Mhm.
become aware of like how they impact us not just this second, but also in the next second, we actually become empowered to make choices which fulfill true pleasure instead of just this hedonistic in this second potato chips in my underwear is the thing that feels really good, even though tomorrow I feel like crap because I ate so much salt and my feet are all swollen up or whatever might be happening to you.
Or even,
Something that I often,
yeah,
sorry,
go
go ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
I was going to say something that I often ask myself is how can I do tomorrow me a favor?
Yes, I love talking about future self. That's one of my favorite things with ADHD is if I think about my future self. Yeah, how can I do tomorrow me a favor? Yeah, I like that
So, like
because
when it comes to self,
yeah,
investing in yourself today might feel scary and it might be like, well, this isn't the most pleasurable thing. Going to buy a $200 worth of stuff at Target is more fun. Maybe right now, but will I actually have pleasure from that over the
no,
next month, over the next year, for the rest of my life?
right,
No, but from this investing in myself, I will because suddenly everything else feels easier and more fun and more generative and more passionate and wow.
right. Or like last night, I was looking at, I was on Stitch Fix, but I didn't like what I saw. So I was on some other similar thing and I was like, oh, this is cute. I'm like, I could get that. And I'm like, we're just going to sit on it. We're going to sleep on it. Cause you know what? Like, we really want to get our house recited over here. When I say we, me and the kitties, my cats. But I really want to get my house sited. And yeah, it'd be nice to have a shirt or two. But if I do that, then I'm farther away from my intention of getting my house sited.
Yeah. And I think, and you're not saying this, but I can feel it in what you're saying is that we need to be able to slow down and actually
Mhm.
check in with ourselves. Are
Yeah,
we
that's
just in
why I
that moment
slept
of
on
like,
it.
yeah.
That's why I
Or am I
slept
in
on
the
it.
moment? This feels really right and really good for us. And so, particularly for people with ADHD, because we tend to be really impulsive,
Hmm.
it's important to slow the decision making process down. Put stuff in
Yes.
your target, think about it, and then go the next day to purchase it. And if you still want it, then go get it.
You know what I used to do is even if I didn't find it on Amazon, I would put it on my Amazon wish list. And if I was still actively thinking about it a month later, I would, depending on what my finances look like, obviously. But if I was still thinking about it a month later and how it would help me or how I wanted it for whatever reason and it was solid, then I would go do it. And do you know how many times that happened?
Yeah.
Zero. That happened zero times. Zero. And I'm talking,
Yep.
I've been doing this at least since 2015. So that's what, 8 years, 8.5 years?
I love that technique. That's great.
That
Another
was,
one I
yeah.
like, I don't always think about, but if you're actually in a shop, is asking yourself, if I have to wait half an hour to check out, is this worth my time to purchase this thing?
Ooh, that's a good one. I like that.
It's how many times are you just, oh, I can't be bothered if it takes that long? Then you didn't really want it,
You
did
didn't
you?
really want it. It was just, ooh, I like that. I like that because
Yeah.
the only thing I would do that for is pants. I'm short, so I got short legs. I sit tall because I'm long waisted, but if I find pants that fit me, I will stand in line for pants. But like a top, oh my gosh, no way. I'd be like, screw it, I get a top. So I'll go to Target, get a top there. That's a
Totally.
good one. My big one for places like that, when I go shopping, I need help. I'm not very good at picking out things for myself, thus the Stitch Fix things. But a lot of times then the people have fun dressing me up. And then they're like, oh, So I'll just go put all these right up for you to pay for them. I'm like, and I used to get in the trap of then buying it all because I felt pressure because they had helped me pick everything out. And so what I learned to do was say, you know what? Thank you so much for your help. I'm going to go check out some other stores and I'll be back to let you know which options I'm going to take. But if I'm not back by 5 o'clock or whatever, go ahead and take them off hold. And they may not have liked me for that, but that's not really my issue. I did it. And then I was able to go back and say, hey, I'd like this piece and this piece, and the rest I'd like you to put away, and just proactively say it rather than having to say no in the moment in a way that didn't feel right. You know what I mean?
Or say yes in the moment because you were really excited because it did all look really cute, even though you have one or two of the items at home already.
Yes, I do own quite a few of the same shirts. If you know me for
Right.
any
I do.
length of time, you'll notice that.
But I think it speaks to, and I know you work with your clients a lot about this, and I do as well, about this nervous system regulation, about feeling really from that calm and relaxed place when we make these
Yeah.
decisions for ourselves, you know?
Yeah. And that can be hard to do when we're overstimulated by trying on clothes and having people be excited about our fun outfits and them getting to dress us up. And that can make it like Mount Everest for us to say no. So because we're not feeling super regulated.
Right. Absolutely. And that's why
Yeah.
it's so important. I always, like you said, take a night to sleep on it. Come
Yeah.
from a calm place, even if you feel like it's a, because we don't realize money is about earning money, but money is also about the way we spend money. And so sometimes when we're excited because the salesperson is excited and all of this stuff, we just need to take a step back and say, is this actually what I want, or am I just caught up in this excitement because I really like excitement?
Yeah. Because ADHD, we're like, excitement. I get excitement. Get excitement. I want excitement.
Right? It's a party. Right. Oh wait, I didn't want to go to this party.
And especially, okay, now here we go. We're going to loop back. But especially if us ADHD entrepreneurs, if it's true that a lot of us are the ones that weren't super popular, and then we're trying stuff on in a store, this comes up for me. And then people are like, oh, yeah. And who knows if they're totally bullshitting me, but they sound right. They sound real. So then that sucks in other parts of us. Holy moly.
It does. And then if we go back to being an entrepreneur in terms of that valuing, that's why we get caught up in thinking things like how much money I have is my value, or how many people
Right.
are responding to my Instagram reel is my value, is all of these external things because of that little stuff that happened when we were 15 years old that we don't think has anything to do with being an entrepreneur, having it, or money.
I think that's important for all of us to hear today, to hear, because I think that impacts us all. A lot of the people I work with who are ADHD entrepreneurs, they struggle with that. They struggle with valuing themselves. Sometimes even struggle with putting time into their business, like that, like thinking that they are worth their own time.
Mhm.
And whether that's like
Wow.
signing up for a program to help them, or whether it's like even getting themselves to their office to work on their business. Right.
Hmm.
I think it's really common. A lot of ADHD women, especially, tend to be helper types. And as such, I think a lot of women are, actually, not all, but that's a sweeping generalization for sure. But I think a lot of times, especially with ADHD, and the hard part about being a helping type is then we often forget to help ourselves, or maybe don't forget, but we get into a mindset of thinking we don't believe it. And some of that can even go back to that 15-year-old trying to be valued and appreciated by being helpful.
100%. I like to call this the reverse golden rule. Do unto yourself as you would do unto others.
Right. That's so true. That's so
Yeah.
true.
Because
Huh.
I think you and I both work with those kinds of people that tend to overgive to the point of depletion because
Totally.
that's how they value. Yep.
It's
That's how
totally
they value
true.
themselves.
That's why both of us end up working on burnout with people.
Mm.
But last week's
Oh, yeah.
episode was on burnout because it was like that's something I'm seeing a lot is so many people with ADHD are burned out, but they're burned out because they're giving and giving and giving and not doing enough. And this is even something my first guest and I talked about. They're not doing enough things that light them up,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
ironically, talking about looping, this actually speaks to where we started, which was these top limiting beliefs people have, is that's the other big foundational one is I have to work really hard. it has to be difficult. I have to work myself to the bone. I have to sacrifice myself in order to make more money and in order to be successful. And as long as we have those beliefs, guess what? That's what it's going to be. We're going to work ourselves to the bone. We're going to sacrifice ourselves. We're going to burn out in order to create the things we want. And our subconscious mind is going to go, we don't want to do that. So instead of
Right.
doing that, we're just going to not make the money. We're not going to have the success. We're going to put the handbrake on,
There's the income
self
ceiling.
sabotage, procrastinate,
Yeah.
income ceiling, all of those things.
So if someone is finding themselves doing that, having these limiting beliefs, like what's one thing I'm going to recommend your program? I'm just going to say that, y'all. I'm going to have Ashlee tell us a little bit about Empowering Wealth because it it was life changing for me. It was business changing for me. So I think it's important that you check it, at least look into it for goodness sakes. But I can't recommend it enough. It's really helpful. It's a lovely community. I think is it just meant for
It's
women?
all women.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Yep.
I didn't know if it was
Yep.
intentionally all women or if it's just that's who you attract, but it's this lovely community of women who are just so authentic and supportive and able to be vulnerable and receive and give feedback in warm, loving, compassionate ways. And I can't recommend it enough. And I want to unpack that a little bit here in a second. But is there if you were going to say one thing, if someone was going to go try and shift one thing this week they were going to work on to help their money mindset, what would you tell them to start to do?
I think a lot of people tend to talk about the limiting beliefs, the thoughts, the things like that. I think the simplest, fastest, easiest thing to do is the nervous system piece. Is if you
Ah,
can, before you sit and look at your bank account, actually come from a place where you feel grounded, calm, and relaxed, you're going to be able to have a much more, I don't want to say opportunistic because that sounds weird, but you're going to have a much better approach to your money. So here's what I mean. If you come into looking at your books, looking at your bank account, and every time you're coming from this place of, oh my God, stress, worry, tension, tightness, contraction, what's going to happen is the fight or flight response literally takes the blood out of your brain and you're going to make bad decisions. You're
whoa.
not going to see opportunities. You're not going to be creative. You're going to make decisions based on panic, based on anxiety, and based on worry, which aren't going to be serving you. They're just going to be trying to help you survive. And surviving
Wow.
is not what we want to do with money. We want to thrive. So if you
Yeah.
can just calm your nervous system before you look at your bank account, before you pay your bills,
Yeah.
do some breathing exercises, something very simple that takes
Yeah.
5 minutes, like trauma-centered yoga that you do with folks,
Yeah.
like that really
Yeah.
helps ground.
Yeah.
And then you approach your money, your creativity is open. Your mind is
Yeah.
open to solution. You can see things in a better way that you're not coming out of this sense of panic of, oh my God, I've got to survive. And you might see new bridges of opportunity to help you create a new income stream, to help you bring in money that you didn't know, to help you shift a price that you weren't even thinking about because you're open. So
Wow.
that is the simplest thing that somebody can
Oh,
do
that's
today because
amazing.
it's also
That's amazing.
yeah,
That's huge. And if you're listening and you're like, how do I regulate my nervous system? The good news is we actually have a podcast episode all about that. So check out the past episodes. I talk about it in a few of them actually, but one in particular. So make sure you check that out. Or you could always sign up to work with me or Ashlee, because we both work a lot with the nervous system. So Ashlee, before we go here, I'd love it if you could speak a little bit about your program, Empowering Wealth. It has been life changing for me. It's been business changing for me, and I'm only like halfway through. And so I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about it. And then we can also share how people can find you. Uh, I think it's a great service to people. It's a really great service to people, and especially to this ADHD entrepreneur community. I think it's really an essential service. So if you could share a little bit about it, I'd appreciate that.
absolutely. And I love that it's made such a profound effect in your business and in your life. And I find that across the board is that people what happens is that people actually experience transformational deep levels of change with this program because it's not just about money mindset, which is about changing the way you think positive or create a vision board or do a mantra. All of that
Yeah.
is great, but that's I want to build a house and I've got a hammer.
Yeah.
Hammers are great tools, but we need the plan and we need to put down the foundation and we need to understand what it is that we're building. And so what we do in Empowering Wealth is we do, like we were just talking about, we do that nervous system regulation. We actually look at trauma and chronic stress and how it has actually impacted our relationship with money, the stories that we're telling ourselves about money, the beliefs that we have about money, the stuck emotions, because we don't even realize that we'll have anger around the way we've spent money in the past, and that will get in the way of us bringing in more money in the future. And who we actually are, that who we actually are is this person who is conscious and will do amazing things with wealth. And it's just going to make us more of who we are, and that we're enough and we're deserving of that wealth now. Because the way I look at it is we are either in one of two modes. We're either in this stressed out response where we get stressed out about money and we get triggered from the beliefs of the past. And these thoughts come up that say, I can't have this, or if I have this, it's all going to get taken away from me. And we get tighter and more constricted. And that feeds into this stress response. And the stress response makes us tighter and more constricted and more worried. Or we learn how to relax and come from this place of pleasure and fun and play, and this place of, this isn't who I am. This isn't going to make me into something else. This is so nourishing, not just for myself, but for the world. And wow, this feels so fun. This feels so good. And then we become relaxed and we see opportunities to make more money, and then more money comes into our life, and it's the totally different energy. So it's like a spring contracting and binding up, or this big expansive energy of, I have a huge container and I can welcome in more anytime I want.
Which is so lovely. It's so lovely. So I also want to say, if you're listening, if you're not following yet, please follow this podcast. I would love that. You can follow me on social media. That's also in the show notes. And comment on what came up for you in this. I think this was a profound conversation. I would love to hear your ahas from it. Make sure you comment and, of course, share with everyone. So I just want to thank you, Ashlee, for being here. You're a really special guest for me because you're not only a friend, but you're an expert that I really respect and I've received a lot of help from. And this was so special. So thank you so much for being here. You're loving Ashlee and you find that, oh my gosh, she could help me so much with my money stuff. There's a way to actually join her program, Empowering Wealth. And I will put a link to that in the show notes so you can get hooked up with her. She has both a coaching option where you get like coaching with her, which is really cool, or just a digital only option. So I'll put that link in the show notes, and take care.